This is The Hypothesis, the show where industry experts debate and discuss growth marketing approaches, digital advertising tactics, measurement plans, as well as creative and growth strategies.
I'm Jonathan Becker, and I'm the founder and president at Thrive Digital.
Hey, I'm Kirby Winfield, founding general partner at Ascend Venture Capital.
Do you get a chance to unplug, you find, during the holidays, or are you still kind of like checking the phone constantly?
No, I don't unplug. I mean, for better or worse, I guess. It's my work is my hobby. It's what I enjoy doing. I woke up like 2 a.m. or something. I couldn't fall back to sleep right away, and I just check my email because to me, like my email in the morning is like opening a present. I kind of miss it if I don't do it because I'm like, ooh, what's in there? Could be a fun new deal. Could be good news from a portfolio company. Could be an investor. So I'm weird that way.
I feel the same way. I feel like the early stages of my career, work very much felt like work. And I felt that I was kind of at the behest of like almost these taskmaster bosses that I used to have that were probably old school and really believed in like a specific way of doing things or a standard work ethic or whatever it was. These days, I'm pretty excited about the nature of what we do. Same thing, like when I open my inbox in the morning, it's exciting. I'm not dreading it. It doesn't feel like a weight on me. I'm kind of like, who do I get to talk to today? And what are the interesting things that I'm going to have to deal with or see? So I think that's an interesting place to kind of begin maybe, but I'm curious, like you and I have caught up a couple of times and I met you back, at Capital Camp this past year. How did you start out? Like, what's your story, man?
Well, I was born and raised in Seattle, went back east for college and graduated in 1996 and moved to Manhattan. Like I just had this romance about it in my head and I moved to the city. And then 3 months in, some of the romance had worn off. The cockroaches had taken over. And a friend of mine who I'd done some copywriting for over the summers called me and said, hey, I'm starting an internet company. You should come help us out. And so I moved back to Seattle and ended up being the sixth employee at a company called GoToNet, which is about the most .com 1.0 name you could have. And it was a very .com 1.0 company. We built a portal. At the core, it was semantic web search that really drove the product. But we went public. We acquired a ton of other companies and kind of built this very robust network of properties that ended up putting us at like number 10 on the internet in terms of traffic. If you go to Google's headquarters, there's a whiteboard with the history of their search engine. And in the year 2000, it says added GoToNet. And then the traffic goes up like 50%. So we were sending them a bunch of traffic, Ask Jeeves, Lycos, all those guys, because we had a meta search engine.
Right.
I ran marketing there until we were worth like $4 billion. And I was like, guys, I don't think I can do this. I have an advertising internship and a creative writing major. I'm not sure I'm qualified to do this anymore, but got to run like national ad campaigns and do outdoor and manage all of our digital. And so that was a ton of fun, learned a lot, very forgiving bosses. The co-founder and COO was my mentor and really good friend. And then we sold the company and went well enough that they asked me to be the first employee at the next company, which was called MarchX. And we started that in 2003. That was also kind of early AI. We used rudimentary machine learning to append metadata to 200,000 websites that we owned. And then we dynamically called advertising and content to those websites. And I ran that business. We grew it from 5 to 50 million in like 2 years. John, as you probably can guess, we did that by leveraging paid search. So I was spending $10 million a year on Google to drive traffic to our pages, which we were monetizing with a Yahoo feed. For those old schoolers in the audience, that was Overture. Paid search. Yeah. We took that public and I left that company in 2008. I did 2 venture-backed startups because I thought that was the next logical step after working for these founders that I should try it. It's harder than it looks is what I found out. And the first one, I had to lay off 2/3 of the staff, recapitalize the company, and we sold it to Comscore, which is a big digital measurement company. And then the second one was a travel app, and we raised a couple million and then sold that to Expedia.
We work with Comscore. They're one of our data providers, so they're obviously still around. But just to riff on something there, the failure part of running a startup, I think, is important for people. So if you're ever looking to start your own company, or work at a company and lead it in some capacity, the experience of having it all go wrong and then coming back from that, being resilient, I always thought was actually the best experience that I got the whole way through. And even I, Thrive has been great for the last 10, 15 years, I would say. But I think I had like 2 or 3 companies I started that were shades of gray, I would say. And one of them bombed and I lost a bunch of money type thing. I wouldn't trade that for the world, though. I thought that was like hard lessons in what not to do. And by the time I started this company, I was able to understand what I needed to do and what I did not want to do and what I did not like and what we should not do, more so than what to do, I think. But that was a really good guide.
Well, you're a fast learner. It took me 4 companies, and I think my 5th is the one I'm doing now, which is our fund Ascend, which I started in 2019. And I think I've got it finally dialed.
We end up working with a lot of venture-backed firms over the last decade plus. There's companies of all different stages that come to us. I always find that their VCs, when you end up working with them, have very, very specific ideas around like why they made the investment, the area they want to invest in, what they're looking for, what they're not looking for. What often that gets described as like the thesis. Is that how Ascend is structured? Like, what's your methodology in terms of like what to invest in and what not to invest in?
There's kind of this false dichotomy that people have around venture where you're either like a gut picker who's just, looking for magical founders, or, on the other side, you have a team of MBAs working around the clock to research 20 thesis areas that then you're just trying to cherry pick an investment in each of them. We kind of blend those 2 approaches and still have a very big bias towards like founder first. We invest in the first institutional round of capital of the companies that we back, which means there aren't a lot of spreadsheets. There aren't a lot of metrics. A lot of times it's, a couple of people and a pilot customer, maybe an alpha technology, maybe a research paper. And so when you're investing at that stage, like it's almost entirely about, underwriting the founder and do they have a vision of the world and how it's going to be in 10 years and specifically why it's going to be different and how they're going to drive that change and benefit from it. And, and you want resiliency and grit, and you want sometimes pedigree is a good indicator, and references are strong, and technical talent and, multiple time startup exposure and all those things kind of come together. But at the end of the day, it's sort of like when you interview someone, you kind of know in the first 5 minutes, and then the rest of the time is spent like trying to make sure that you didn't get false signal. And then from a thesis perspective, my first fund was generalist. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll invest in great founders, and whether they're doing consumer brands or they're doing marketplaces or doing AI, B2B software, vertical SaaS or whatever. And what I learned is that there are a couple of challenges with that. First, from a marketing perspective, if you're a new investor and you don't really stand for anything, then people don't know to look for you. You're not going to think of me for a deal in consumer if you don't think of me as a consumer investor. You're not going to think of me for a deal in AI if you don't think I'm an AI investor. And really, I was presenting myself to the market as just like this dude in Seattle who wrote checks, which is fine, but it gets you a mixed bag and it doesn't get you the best deal flow. And so from a marketing perspective, to say nothing of like a strategic capital allocation perspective where you do want to kind of underwrite to, okay, are we undergoing a platform shift here? Is this the next mobile? Is this the next internet? We believe Gen AI is certainly provably that. We think it's like a 6-year window, maybe an 8-year window. Most of the commercial value gets created in the fast followers, not in the first wave. Okay. So can I be smart about that? And can I build a thesis around this moment in time, this particular technology? And can that then be the filter for, what we focus on, how we talk about what we do? So we build that virtuous cycle of founder recognition. We make the investments. Those investments go well. They get backed by really good VCs. More founders see us on the cap table. They think of us because they're also building with AI. So we really have a dual thesis where we go. We call it SaaS 3.0. Fun SEO fact: if you search for SaaS 3.0, our thesis page comes up first. We own it. And that's just basically AI native vertical software disrupting the world. And then we also invest in horizontal AI, the infrastructure that supports agents and applications.
Most of the stuff you're talking about is really early stage. So would you categorize that as like angel level, where you're literally like the first check into a deal, or are you like in a syndicate of other investors that are also investing?
We call it first institutional round. It could be a $5 million seed, although we prefer it not to be. It could be $1 million pre-seed. It could be just us at 500K in an angel round.
When I talk to like your classic Series A level investor or later than that, they look at these deals and there is a lot more substantial, information about the business. There's like income statements, balance sheets, all of that stuff, but they also can assess, things like product market fit. And then I think the most important thing that I've seen people look at is kind of where the opportunities are. So is this company solving a problem that the market has? Have they proven that there's like revenue and sales possible? And then what do they need the cash for, essentially? And so like often that's where I come in, because someone reaches out, a VC is either saying, can you look at this? Is it investable from like a growth marketing point of view? Or we just wrote a check, would you take this project type thing. The earlier stages I find are a lot more about, helping a company with brand, determining product market fit as it relates and rolls up to the brand, different go-to-market, strategies and functions and the execution, laying infrastructure, a lot of testing. So I'm curious though, like, where do you see with Ascend, where is that intersection of like where you're investing in something where you know what they are going to use the money on type thing versus we just feel that this company can use a lot more cash. We're really excited about what they're doing, and the investable area part is less important.
We invest in companies where the most important metric after we invest is not revenue, but it's learnings per dollar spent. Almost entirely, we're backing companies and we're expecting them to spend the money on development and experimentation. From a go-to-market perspective, whether that's from a product perspective, our job is to get the company to the point where they need money because they have demand to serve, and that's when they raise their seed round. And so we live in that space before that happens.
That's super interesting. Can you elaborate a little bit on learnings per dollar spent? Like, how do you think about that?
Just an example would be like, go do a trade show. Don't even get a booth. Just go and like park outside and like, tailgate people into the show floor and just hustle and see if it's worth doing. See if you get leads. Buy a booth, spend 20 grand and don't expect to make any money off of it, because especially in events, like, you're not going to make money probably off the first event, but just does it feel worth doing? Is there a better place to talk to prospects than a trade show? Probably not a more efficient place. Right? So you could get on the phone and you cold call a bunch of people and spend 2 months doing that, or you go to a show for 2 days. Go to a show where actually it's a show of people who are your potential prospects. You don't need a booth. Just go and like pitch people at the booth. And again, the goal is not to make money. The goal is to figure out whether your story resonates. Who has the problem you're trying to solve. We talk to people about experimenting with paid search. They're always like, well, God, it's so expensive, and the conversion rate is going to be low. And I'm like, my thing was always, your job is to get one conversion. I don't care if you pay friggin' $5,000 to sell a $10 t-shirt. Like, what you just proved is that you can spend money to sell a thing on the internet. That's a learning,
yeah.
Right? That's a learning per dollar spent. That's not revenue. That's not net revenue, but that's what I mean.
It's super interesting because so I always explain to people that the first rule of digital marketing is not to forget the learnings from offline marketing. So your trade show example is interesting because it's a really focused audience, right? There's this concept of go fish where the fish are type thing. And then backing out into paid search, which you mentioned, each keyword is a focused audience. These are people who are declaring to you what they're in market searching for specifically, like by literally the words that they're typing out into Google or a different search engine. And so the analogy is the same, right? Like, how do we capture one deal, one lead out of that situation? And there's definitely a methodology, but to me, when I think about, venture capital investment at any stage, really, all we're actually doing is figuring out where those audiences are and what the likelihood of them converting to customers is. And then the way you do that by different channel varies across different parts of the funnel or different tactics that you might be using, and so on and so forth. So it's interesting. What are you the most excited about right now? So again, we've chatted a bunch of times about different portfolio companies, that you've been involved with. Is there anything that you guys have done recently and it's like the first thing you wake up and think about in the morning or the last thing before you go to sleep and you're just like, this is going to be huge?
Yeah, I mean, the one that we did, there's always a little bit of a recency bias, right? You're super excited when you make the investment. Hopefully you stay excited. Hopefully you have reason to be excited consistently for 12 to 15 years until the IPO. But certainly out of the gate, we just made an investment in a company called Kamiwaza. They are solving the problem of secure LLM usage at the enterprise.
So in the marketing world, whether you're on the brand side, the performance marketing side, different parts of media buying, even graphic designers, there's a lot of like lore around VCs and what it means to be a VC, what your expectations are, how people get into it, all of that kind of thing. And so I'm curious, like, can you talk a little bit about how investors think about marketing? So we know that they look to us, as a growth lever, but like when you're really early stage and your goal is, learnings per dollar or something like that, where does the rubber hit the road with something like that in terms of an early stage company that's trying to figure out how to do marketing? Because a lot of times, these folks who have founded companies, they're brilliant. They've created an incredible solution, but it doesn't mean they know how to brand it, package it, and sell it. And so, like, where do you start from the viewpoint of people who are writing the checks?
Well, it's hard for me to speak for all VCs, especially since, I'm only 5 years in. And I'm also biased because I'm a recovering marketer. So, like, I'm very much
Even better.
a believer in, I'm putting that front and center. But I'll say I think there is a general bias by VCs against hiring marketing too soon. We talk a lot about, founder-led sales. And the kind of rule of thumb is that you want the founder to be the only salesperson in the company until you reach $1 million in ARR. And I'm talking, this is all B2B because that's all I do. But for B2B, enterprise software, the rule of thumb is founder-led sales until $1 million. People don't talk about it, but they also mean founder-led marketing until $1 million. Because the problem is if you hire a marketer, the marketer generally wants resources. And before $1 million in ARR, you just don't have the resources to really do much. And if you're doing anything, you're experimenting. And experiments are inherently like not programmatic and don't need to be resourced with like full headcount. And much like sales, before you hit $1 million in revenue, like the only person who can really tell the story about the brand is the founder. The founder is building the brand by telling the story, by selling the product. Sales is market research and sales is branding. Certainly we try to support founders and say, okay, well, at some point you need like a one sheet and you need to think about, how you position yourself against your competitors and, maybe try to be mindful of, your pricing strategy. Although realistically, that's also not something you can worry about too much early on.
Totally up in the air.
Pricing strategy is, what will people pay for? I think most VCs don't really want to see a ton of investment around this for B2B, certainly until you get to $1 million. Maybe even Series A for like a B2B company. It's obviously very different for consumer.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree with that. The type of company, like the category that it sits in, is obviously important. But I do agree that, the first year of starting a business and maybe even within that first $1 million that you generate, you're learning how to sell the product. And so if marketing comes in too early, they're basically just burning through resources because there's nothing to market. And I agree, the founder has the vision, for the problem they're trying to solve, how to talk about it, how to explain it. And that ends up becoming the packaging of the message. And then that's what ultimately gets distilled out of that process and marketed by marketers. Stage definitely matters. I had dinner last night with a friend of mine who's, I guess you'd call it a CPG company that he's founded. And they have an interesting business where they essentially sell toilet paper dispensers. They've reinvented like how to think about toilet paper. So the company's called Foxfold. Hotels have this problem where every time a guest switches rooms or, finishes their stay, you have to take out all the toilet paper rolls. And essentially they just get turfed, they get thrown away.
Right.
So number one, it creates a lot of waste and inefficiency. It's bad for the environment. Creates a lot of dollars that are inefficiently allocated. And so he was kind of like, why don't we like use basically the same approach as Kleenex, where a piece of toilet paper is single serve. We'll create a special dispenser, whatever it is. And so it's interesting to talk to them because they're starting to gain traction in the market. But to your point, they're really, really early, and they're still learning about how to position the product and experiment whether it should be like a direct consumer type product or really this B2B thing where they just are a wholesaler distributor to hotels and other hospitality type businesses. And so I think you're right. If he was to go raise a bunch of money and build out some marketing team, it's the wrong time to do it. Whereas other companies that I've seen really have that story buttoned up and the product buttoned up and pricing buttoned up and how to charge through installments buttoned up. They're not necessarily learning about that piece. And that's a good time, to invest in marketing. I was going to ask you though, obviously I'm biased. I always like to think and talk about marketing, but what are some other areas that you've seen a lot of success investing in? Assessed a company, you've written a check. There's a lot more in the company going on outside of marketing. Are there like favorite areas that you like to look at or see, develop further post investment, or what's that journey look like when you're trying to help a business mature?
Oh gosh, I mean, I'm pretty worthless on technology and product. I sort of get out of the way when they're in build mode. I'm much more of a go-to-market kind of focused person. So, if it's not marketing, I really do love marketing. I mean, I love talking to founders about like content marketing. There's so many things you can do that just don't require that much work. They just require consistency. I always give the example of like some of the things we've done at Ascend. I started a blog on our website, and I just came up with 8 questions that I would ask VCs. And they would be initially like VCs in Seattle that maybe weren't getting, like they were younger, they weren't getting as much coverage from like press. And I just would send them an email. They would like elaborate, they'd make these huge answers to these questions. And then I would put their image, big smiling image of them and write a nice like intro and publish it. And then I would share it on LinkedIn. And then they would share it on LinkedIn. And then all their friends would comment and they would share it on LinkedIn. And we just started doing that, and it takes no time. I did it on Squarespace. Like I put it up, whatever, once a week, once every 2 weeks. And we did it for a couple of years. And I mean, now, like if you search for Ben Gilbert, who is, the co-founder of the Acquired podcast, the most popular technology podcast on the planet.
Yeah.
I think we're like the second or third result on Google for Ben Gilbert because we did that with him. Yeah. And it literally takes nothing. You just have to be consistent. You just have to believe. And so like I always tell that story to our founders that we work with, not because I'm so smart, but because I'm so stupid. Because it's literally, if I could do it, there's nothing stopping you from profiling the associate marketing manager at your client, right? Or at the place that you want to be selling into. Like there are people out there who want to be featured on your blog, even if you don't have a blog. And before you know it, like it builds on itself. And it's just one example. So I just get so geeked out on marketing stuff. Outside of that, I mean, I think I am kind of an operations junkie a little bit too. Like my investor, my VC at my last company, after I sold it, goes, next time maybe you should be a COO, not a CEO. But I think he was onto something. I actually enjoy building admin tools, and like I enjoy instrumentation. And I enjoy, like finding the story in the data. Yeah. By the way, that's also like plugs into marketing. Like if you're not instrumented and you don't know what's happening on your website or in your product, then you can't tell a story about it.
Yeah, I find that taking chaos and finding a path to simplicity is a really rewarding thing. And it's not just a marketing thing. It can be like everything from organizing your desk and having it as like a clean place to like start your day, to hanging out with a spreadsheet for a few hours and trying to figure out like the actual like valuable information within it and how to like distill out that through like a really simple graph or something like that. There's all kinds of areas in businesses that are inefficient, and yet each of these functions has to work in tandem with one another to have like the output of revenue somehow. And so marketing is one of these areas where I feel like, we have a lot of experience trying to figure out how to take something chaotic and make it less chaotic. But then there's all these other areas that are like conjoined. And I always love hearing people's like opinions and hot takes on like little hacks and whatnot around areas where you can like rethink something in a clever way, and it just lifts your efficiency and whatnot.
So much of early stage startups is just work, which means like go do the thing that's a pain in the ass. Like go do the blunt force approach. Like if you're not getting enough feedback or you're not generating enough leads, don't hire an SDR. Just go on LinkedIn and look at my LinkedIn connections. Just go and tell me 100 people you want to talk to. Like, let's go. There's nothing stopping you but work.
Yeah.
It's just work. And so getting people like out of like this precious mode of like, okay, we've built this really great technology and it's awesome and the product is awesome. And like, but gosh, I just, I'm not getting enough pipeline.
Yeah.
If you're not getting enough pipeline, it's because you're not working hard enough. Like, it's not because it's friggin' rocket science.
We had a lead once, and it was from like a Crunchbase famous, tech company, I would say. And they had a couple, highly decorated, somewhat famous VCs that had just funded a big round for them. And I get on a call with this guy, and he's like, we're data led, social focused startup, Bitcoin, blockchain, like every single buzzword. It was kind of interesting. And then he's like explaining this very, 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 very targeted audience that he wanted to go after. And he wanted to use a methodology called account-based marketing, where you like, for those people that are listening that may not know what that is, essentially it's like highly, highly targeted, like geo-targeted campaigns that only target like the HQ of the company where all the decision makers are, or, a number of different things that are very, very specific. And I'm sitting there for 20, 30 minutes, like letting him go on and on and on about how granular he wanted this campaign to be. And I was like, dude, just hire a sales guy. Like, hire a sales guy, like, bang on some phones, like, show up at people's offices or doors if you need to. But, like, it's way too specific for the nature of, like, digital marketing. You know what I mean? And I think ABM has come a long way. And I'm not suggesting that, like, what LinkedIn is doing right now, or, other DSP based platforms are doing right now is not good. But at a certain point, that you have to like have a bit of a gut check and just think about like, is what I'm attempting to do actually practical, or is there another way? Is there just like hard work that I'm trying to skip over by, trying to be overly sophisticated, or whatever, right? And so I totally agree with you. The landscape of investing oftentimes is about either finding early opportunities, late stage opportunities. Sometimes what I hear from investors is that they're looking for undervalued opportunities. And so in the world of venture capital, like maybe that's an oxymoron sometimes. Like I think the whole nature of that process creates a lot of like inflation of value within the, economics of these companies. But going back to marketing, because you're a marketer, you think there's any undervalued parts of the marketing mix right now that you wish people paid attention to more? That get skipped over for some of the flashier, more topical areas?
I'm a big fan of targeted outdoor. We did bus wraps. I mean, this is how old I am. We did wraps of the Wall Street Journal and handed them out in front of ad agencies, like, because that was our target.
I love that.
But like to your point about ABM, like outdoor is a great way to hyper target.
In actual reality.
Yeah. In
not virtual reality, but actual reality. It's still relevant, actual reality?
I think it's relevant, man. I was just thinking about it the other day. I'm always worried that I'm going to miss the next, killer software engineer at AWS who, doesn't pay any attention to the startup ecosystem, doesn't know anything about Ascend or me, and is just like building something amazing on the side and is going to spin out. I'm not going to know about it. And she's not going to know about me. And I'm like, how do I get around that? And I was like, you know what I could do? I could just set up a card table in front of AWS offices with like the Ascend logo and just a note that says, "Big company employees can't do startups. Prove me wrong," like, or something, right? And just park the van.
Like dude holding a sign.
Yeah, hold the sign. Like, I mean, and literally, actually, and then to call myself out, I'm like, well, that's just work, right? I mean, if I cared enough, if I thought that was worth my time, I'd do it. So as soon as the weather gets better, look out for the Ascend pop-up outside of a technology office near you.
I love that, Matt. Look, I really appreciate you coming out and sharing part of your experience and your time and your day. Where can people find you and reach out to you if they want to connect?
I'm super available. My email's on our website, which is just ascend.vc. And I spend way too much time on Twitter, which is my handle's at Kirby Winfield. So that's probably the best shots.
Amazing. Well, again, thank you, Kirby. We'll keep watching you and Ascend as things progress, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you again soon. Thanks for your time today.
This has been The Hypothesis. Thank you so much for tuning in. For show notes or to get in touch, find us at thehypothesisshow.com or at Thrive Digital, both linked for you in our description box. And if you liked today's episode, we'd love if you'd rate and review wherever you're listening or watching. Thanks!